How about this for a matchup on Thursday night to kick off Week 10 in the NFL? The Ravens are almost a touchdown favorite at home to a much improved Cincinnati Bengals team. It all begins with the pregame show at 7 Eastern on TSN this Thursday. After the game is over, stay tuned. Keep it locked in. Will appear on your TV screens right after the final whistle. SportsCenter with Jay Onrait, myself, and Luke Willson will break down that game. And here is Luke Willson for his weekly edition of Luke Who's Talking. We like to talk about things happening around the NFL. Luke, this is a fun one because we're officially halfway through the NFL season. So I want to get your take on a few different things, but we asked you to put together a list of teams that you thought would be legitimate threats to win the Super Bowl at this moment in time. And in your mind, it's 5 teams. You've got the Chiefs and Ravens, and then 3 NFC North teams, including the Vikings, despite the fact that you texted our producer the following on Sunday, bro, the Vikings are trash. So, Luke, and our producer's a Vikings fan. So, Luke, how'd the Vikings make the cut here?
I'm guilty as charged. Yeah, I did send that. Guilty as charged. But Jay, first and foremost, they made the cut because of Justin Jefferson. This guy is an absolute star in this league, and no one can cover him. I think he's the best receiver in the NFL. Then we go on, who'd they get back last week? A premier pass-catching tight end, T.J. Hawkinson. The next guy I would say offensively, they got to start getting more active because he's a great player, obviously very young, is Addison, and Aaron Jones has been great. Sam Darnold has probably been my least favorite part of this offense, and he's played very, very well. I text the producer that, again, guilty as charged, mainly to poke the bear and because they have a glaring weakness, which is their secondary. But what I liked was in the second half, the secondary was able to shut down Joe Flacco, which obviously you're expecting to see better opponents in the playoffs. But that being said, I do believe with Brian Flores and the veterans they have in that secondary, all they're going to need is a couple plays here and there, perhaps a turnover, and this offense should be able to handle the rest. They have great wins on the roster right now, on the season, I'm saying. You beat Green Bay, you beat a healthy San Fran team, and you took basically Detroit to the brink. I got to call them a contender.
Okay, that's a pretty short list, though, even with the Vikings on it. Are there any teams outside of that 5, Luke, that you think might have a chance to play their way into contention by the end of the season?
For sure. In the AFC, it's the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills, to me, are a new team. They're not as deep. They're not as talented as the Chiefs and the Ravens. But right now, this is a new team. Jay, we joke about it all the time. I've been very tough on the Bills. And the Bills generally find a way to lose games. And this year, they've done the opposite. They've found ways to win games. I love the win they just had against Miami. I thought it was tough. It was the second time they played them this year. Divisional opponent. Got it done. I just need to see maybe a little more, and maybe I'm just being a hater, but I think that if they play a couple more good teams like the Dolphins and win games like that, I will put them as a legitimate contender. The Seahawks, who they blew out, we've been saying all year, I think are pretty poor. The Titans are pretty poor. So that's kind of why it's nothing against them. They've handled their business. I just like to see a couple more great wins, and I'm putting them right up there with Baltimore and Kansas City.
What about in the NFC? What about Atlanta? Any chance you feel like Kirk Cousins can get it all together at the right time? Because they're playing pretty well lately. You love Kirk Cousins.
You know it, Jay. You know it. Don't get me started on this team. I'm not putting them in that NFC North trio yet. But that being said, this team is humming. Kirk Cousins, the guy looks incredible. He's having fun. He's swag surfing. He walks into people's trap. He takes over their trap. It's ridiculous. Okay? He's got Kyle Pitts humming now, too, a little bit. Drake London, Mooney, Bijan Robinson is coming into his own. And I also love Tyler Algier, the second string back, who'd be a first-team guy on most other teams. So I sit here, Kirk's playing extremely well. They're probably going to win that division. The only reason I don't have them as a legit contender is I need to see more from the defense. They've had some moments. They're not a great defense. I think that the sacks, which they got last week, but they were last in league before last week, need to happen more consistently, and then you put them in there in the conversation as well.
Luke, is there a team that's maybe getting a bit of buzz around the NFL to become a contender that you actually don't quite believe in the way other analysts might?
To me, it's the Houston Texans. And I'm not saying they're a bad football team, Jay, but I think that I know he's coming back, but the Nico Collins injury, should be back this week, did hurt them, expose them a little bit. Losing Stephon Diggs for the season, who was going to be their number 2 behind Collins, has hurt. Tank Dell has looked good, not great. You know, the tight end Schultz has not been utilized, I think, as most people thought. C.J. Stroud, obviously, coming off a great rookie campaign, has been good, you know, but not great, not to the level, the elite level you'd like to see of some of these other AFC team quarterbacks that we just talked about. And the next thing that scares me is the defense has been good against the pass, but not great against the run, you know, and I think about the playoffs, potentially having to go into Arrowhead, potentially having to go to Buffalo in the cold. You got a defense right now that's giving up 4.7 yards per carry. You know, if Derrick Henry comes to town in the playoffs, that 4.7 is probably going to be 6.5 that night, and they're going to get knocked out.
Finally, I love this one. I'd love to pick your brain on this one. Your NFL MVP at this point of the season.
Okay, I have a problem with this award, Jay. I do, because I'm not exactly sure what it is anymore. What is the most valuable player? And to me, Lamar is the most statistical valuable player and should be in the lead. He deserves it. He runs touchdowns in. He scores touchdowns. He throws them. I mean, he scrambles. He makes off-schedule plays. He can deliver the ball. He's got different guys catching the ball. I wouldn't say that outside of Derrick Henry, he has any like perennial, you know, superstar catching the football for him. He uses both tight ends. He uses 2-3 receivers a lot. So he does it all. I'm giving him the green light as my front runner. But the next guy I will say that I truly believe this should be Jared Goff. And I know the stats aren't there, but you take Jared Goff out of this team, and I do not think that they're nearly as successful. This guy's efficiency is through the roof. He's processing the game of football like no one else in the NFL at this level right now. To go into Lambeau last week in that rain and have the amount of incompletions that he did was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I mean, the stats of incompletions to touchdowns for 6 games now, the Lions having more touchdowns, is absurd, and he is the conductor of that symphony. And I know that he's got a great run game and a great offensive line, but Lamar has Derrick Henry. I don't know why Jared Goff isn't considered to be closer to the MVP than what he is right now.
Luke, as we mentioned, Ravens and Bengals, little AFC North action in the Monday night or the Thursday nighter, and you're going to join me after the game to talk about it. So I'm looking forward to that. Until then, have a great night, buddy.
Can't wait.